Hello to those of you who count it a privilege to be part of the Mastriano Army. First, by way of disclaimer, what I'm about to discuss comes from me personally and not from Doug Mastriano. They are simply my thoughts, observations, and opinions. It's how I see it, and I hope you will see it the same way. Like me, many of you are anxiously and patiently awaiting that great next step for Senator Douglas Mastriano and have been following his career as a public servant since early 2020. We want Doug to travel down that road again to become the 2026 governor elect of Pennsylvania. But perhaps you wonder what he is thinking and what he has been doing regarding the possibility of running for governor. And the answer is quite simple. Keep in mind that Doug does not play the game of the typical same old politics. In fact, that is why he has such a large grassroots following. Doug is consistent and does the same thing he always does. First, he has been praying for God's wisdom and guidance on the journey forward. As a Christian, he knows the Bible tells us before pursuing serious actions or activity, we are to seek God's face, which is, in other words, means to search out God's will for our direction. The Bible also tells us to draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. That is where Doug has begun. Secondly, right now, he is seeking donor funding to build up a campaign war chest. Rather than following the politician's playbook who comes out declaring their plan to run for office, informing you that they are your champion, and begin making all kinds of non vetted promises like help is on the way, we supporters of Doug Mastriano already know his mind, hope, and goals for a better Pennsylvania and have donated financially to a man who has already earned our trust, fought for our freedoms, and is clearly equipped to lead us in a higher government office like governor. You know this. I know this. We all know this. By making a contribution now to the Friends of Doug Mastriano link below, that response will show Doug that you believe in him, his service, and his future to be your next governor. See how special this is? It's not Doug dictating to you that he should run. It never has been in the past, and still today, it is we, the people, who are driving Doug Mastriano to run for office. We do this collectively with our donations, and we are, in fact, the first cause and inspiration that will convince him to run in 2026 for governor. No, Doug has not yet announced his run for this office, but remember, he didn't announce until January 2022 for his first run for governor. His approach today is the same as it was then. Understandably, we are anxious to hear the official announcement, yet remarkably, it rests within our ability to make that happen and convince Doug to say the words, "I'm running for governor." Remember, Doug didn't come here by the will of the establishment, political party, labor union, lobbyist, or big business, but he was the people's choice. We, the people, have always been the driving motivation for this man to lead our Commonwealth. Our grassroots effort built the Walk as Free People movement with a patriot champion for freedom. Our prayers, our pleadings for help, our willingness to volunteer, to donate, to gather signatures, to knock on doors, to make phone calls, and to publish via social media were far greater than one man running alone for office. But let's step back some years to consider the events that led up to this Walk as Free People movement. Few events in life can define our lives with a lasting memory. Most of you are old enough to remember 9/11 with planes crashing and the Twin Towers falling, a time that you remember so vividly what happened, where you were, and how you felt. Well, 2020 in March, for many, was one of those events, a time when the clock and calendars seemed to stop bringing us into almost a twilight zone. Pennsylvania's governor locked down the state, tried to shut us indoors, closed schools, businesses, and restaurants by his autocratic unilateral decisions, and leaving multitudes unemployed, desperate, and some on the verge of suicide. I remember this. Do you? Most churches locked their doors, failing in their role of public gathering for worship. The detrimental list affecting Pennsylvania's citizens physically, mentally, and emotionally was endless. At that very moment, I knew that we no longer lived in a free Commonwealth. I remember this. Do you? And then a man, unknown to most of us, enters the scene on his daily Facebook Live fireside chats. His name was Douglas Mastriano. He calmed our fears, gave us hope, kept us informed, encouraged us with scripture, even comforted us with prayer, and provided help and direction for our needs. He continued to do his job as an elected public servant of the people, and while he represented his constituents of just one Pennsylvania district, he told us all, even if you are not in my district, you are my people. I remember this. Do you? But the repression of Pennsylvania's governor continued as he hurled his Secretary of Health's directives at us with masking, distancing, and other unscientific and non proven measures to control our lives. Fines, lawsuits, and state police enforcement became the arm of terror by the governor against persons and businesses for noncompliance with directives, which were not even laws. Senator Mastriano was there for us again, addressing these requirements, showing us who the real science deniers were. Our senator, throughout this dark period of history, challenged the tyranny and oppression of Pennsylvania's citizens like no other. He introduced and co-signed bills to counter these actions against us. Doug stood publicly on the Harrisburg Capitol steps in protest, along with so many patriots who cried for deliverance. Doug stood with the businesses that were under siege. He guided and strengthened their resolve to stand against injustice. Doug made great efforts to conduct investigation into the voting irregularities and fraud of the 2020 election, seeking a forensic audit before becoming the object of unwarranted attack by those who wanted to hide the truth. And finally, there was an attack upon the bodily autonomy and medical freedom of Pennsylvania citizens in the form of so-called COVID vaccine mandates. These mandates, being first issued by private industry, then state and federal mandate, placed many under great duress with coercion and even termination from their jobs, and no unemployment benefits. Doug Mastriano introduced the Medical Freedom Act to address this workplace tyranny where businesses conducted this oppression against employees being like state actors for the government. I remember this. Do you? So here we are as patriots, and we still have a man with courage, a strong public servant, the colonel, the senator, the people's choice, with an undaunting determination for truth, justice, and righteousness. Douglas Mastriano. And we still have a strong grassroots movement to see him elected as your Pennsylvania governor. We need to do this, people. Today, would you please open up your hearts, your wallets, and your savings to donate for his future campaign? Consider how you might sacrifice something you really don't need to buy, or some recreational activity you can postpone, or maybe even a planned retirement where you can just work 1 or 2 additional months and contribute that money now to the senator. Just remember, since 2020, Doug Mastriano has given himself to us sacrificially and unreservedly, and he still does this today. Now it's our turn to give back to him. Now is the time for our future, our family's future, and the future of this great Commonwealth. Let's make this a really big show of faith for Doug to move forward. Thank you all in advance for your consideration and help for all of us.